Okay, continuing from where we left off, I went ahead and saw what I liked about the silhouette. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the reference here. And I looked at the silhouette and I saw what I liked and what I didn't like, and maybe picked a few things that kind of weren't as visually interesting. And I tweaked it a bit. And you can see here, this is the old one, and this is the one that I just stretched a few things out and make sure things look pretty clean, things like that. No big changes. The only thing I added were these little kind of fin things here, just to kind of give a little visual accent to this part up here. And so everything pretty much stayed the same. So I just kind of made sure I liked the silhouette. It looked good in silhouette view here. Something looked pretty good. So I was pretty happy with that. So moving on, we're going to go ahead and make sure we have the UV set up correctly. So I'm going to do a really basic UV setup process for the majority of this, and I'll show you how I go about doing that so that you can save as much space as possible, but also getting a lot of use out of your texture sheets. So we'll start with one of the major pieces, which is the sign here. So if I go to Edit UV Texture Editor, and to start out, I usually say create automatic mapping. This just makes it simple so that it just automatically maps it to how I want it. It just kind of starts out in a good place. It also gives me a pretty good point of reference. Sometimes if you get a weird skewed thing over here, you might want to go ahead and edit, delete all type, history, and modify and freeze the transformations. Sometimes it'll have some history on it that might skew the actual projection of the automatic mapping. Now you see here we have a pretty big, two big pieces that are pretty much going to be the same thing on either side. So what we're going to do about that is we're actually going to just delete half of this structure for now, and then we'll just mirror it later on during our construction process. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So that leaves us with just this half, because just this half is pretty much just going to be duplicated on the other side and show the same thing. So that cuts our UVs in half, so we only have to use half the space. So we're going to go ahead and stitch these seams together and make sure this is laid out pretty well. And I'm going to rotate this around like this. And that's good for right now. It's pretty clean. A good way to test this is I use the, if you go to the Hypershade editor, sometimes I will make a new Lambert. I'll throw it on there, and I'll take a checker pattern, and I'll use that middle mouse click and drag into the color, and then I will check the placement of it, and I will make sure it repeats by, say, like 20. And then if you turn high quality mode on, you can actually see and check to see if any of the checkerboard is stretching, and that'll allow you to kind of just to see if your UVs are done correctly or not. And so this looks pretty good. I don't see any stretching or anything. See, if it was skewed, you could see in the checkerboard you get a weird pattern going through right here because it's skewed in the middle. I'll also turn this on so you can see it a bit better. So, like I said, create, I'm going to do automatic mapping, and it gives me a pretty good looking map here, and just sew these edges together again. So that's all done. And I'll move on to, say, for instance, this smaller piece, and I can throw this on there if I need to test it. I create automatic mapping, go to my UV texture editor. And you see here how I have it. What I want to do is, for this part, is actually sew together just the kind of outside parts where the metal is, and then have the this middle face in here as a separate part, because this is going to be a different, this is going to have the letters on it that say motel across it. And then the outside part is going to be a different kind of metal. So I kind of want those separated so I can paint those pretty easily. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to make sure, let's see, Spotify, freeze transformations, edit, delete all by type history, create automatic mapping. Okay. So we have, if you select an edge here, you just hit F and it'll focus on that edge in your actual scene. So this is the top of that. So what we want to do is we want to sew this edge and this edge, which is just side of that, and this edge. This lays everything out within the thing so I can kind of straighten back up to see what I'm doing. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut these so I can more easily get them within on the sides of these side parts here, because I want these side parts to be attached. So I'm going to do like that. And you see here it attaches all those. The same thing goes for this. So I have that. And these are all the inside parts, so I can go ahead and attach these to the edges too. So now it's all attached. So now the only part left I have is this face right here and this face right here. And actually, to save myself some more space on my texture map, I'm going to do the same thing I did on the with this, and I'm actually going to delete the face on this side, because what I'll do is I'll just copy the face from the other side. So it'll say motel on this side, and it'll be the same motel on this side, but you won't be able to tell that it's mirroring because you never really see both sides at once. So you only get to see one side at a time. So it saves us a bit more room. So that part is done. And we have the border edge of this sign right here. Create automatic mapping. And I'm going to go ahead and cut all this up here so I can get a little better control of it. And I want to pick the edges I want to sew together. So I'm going to sew together these and this. So what I do key wise is I usually go to edge, right click, and I'll select the edge, and then I'll sew it with this button here, and then edge, select, sew it. Now if I want to move the shell, which is this whole piece, I just click this button right here, and that allows me to move the whole shell. And then I tap W to get out of shell mode to be able to do something else, like go back to the edge selection again. This part is this part right here. And you can see down here, if I turn off, I've actually gotten rid of the edge here because it was actually going to be hidden inside of this piece. So it's not necessary because I'm not going to ever see it. So I went ahead and cut that off because that's unnecessary polys that I don't need to have in the model. But this edge, you're definitely going to see. So I'm just going to sew it just at the end here, just so I get a piece down here. So that's laid out. And I'm going to do the same thing on this piece as I did with these two pieces, where I only keep one side of the actual UV, and then I'm just going to mirror it on the other side. And I'm going to keep doing that for a couple of these pieces, like this piece as well. This piece is kind of small, so I might keep both sides. That's no big deal. And this piece I'll try to see if I can't mirror as well. So I'll continue on doing that. And then I'll show you as I kind of clean those UVs up.